For this validation.js file, I added a bunch of tests. And it's not uncommon that you have many tests in one testing file, because it's not uncommon that you have multiple functions and therefore multiple units in one and the same file. In numbers and math, we only had one function each, but that's not necessarily the default. It could be, but it's definitely not unnormal to have multiple functions and therefore multiple tests. Now, when you have multiple tests like this, it can be hard to maintain them, but that's not the biggest problem. Instead, it can be hard to reason about the output when you run your tests. I mean, here we got a bunch of tests now, and especially for the validation test.js file, it's not really clear which tests belong to which unit, to which function. It always just says should throw an error and so on. So which tests do belong to which unit? To make that clearer, it is very common to organize your tests into so-called test suites. And the test suite is created with another special function provided by vtest and also by Jest, and that's the describe function. You execute describe, and you also again start with an argument that's a string, and that string simply describes the unit that you want to test. Now you could write some longer text here, but what I like to do, which makes it really clear to which kind of function or class tests belong, is I just take the name of the function or class or whatever you're testing, and you put it in there, maybe followed by parentheses to make it clear that this is a function. And now the test suite has this identifier, so to say. You then pass a second argument to describe, and this takes an anonymous function, or a named function, doesn't matter, but it takes a function, in this case an arrow function, and inside of this arrow function, you put all your tests that belong to this unit. In my case here, that would be all these tests here up to this test. I cut them and moved them here into this inner function here for this first describe call. Now they still will be executed and evaluated in the same way. That did not change. It's just about organizing them and organizing the testing output. That's the only purpose describe has here. Now with that, we of course also want to add another test suite by calling describe again for the other function here, validate number. So that's my identifier here. And I also have my function here, and all the other tests which I have here go into this second describes anonymous function. With that, again, as mentioned, if we run npm test, everything executes as before, but what we can see now is that here, for the validation test.js file, we now got these two suites here in the end, right? So we got this suite, and we got this suite here, and you can see these suite identifiers, the testing suite identifiers here. And we get some indentation to make it really easy to see which tests belong to which suite. And this is of course especially helpful if some test should fail and you quickly want to find it. You would then see which test fails, and you can quickly locate the suite in a given file to locate the test that failed. You can also nest multiple describes into each other if you need a more granular way of structuring your test. If you had one unit, one function that still has like a dozen or multiple dozens of tests, then maybe just a describe for the overall function will not do it, and you would have some inner describes by adding more describes here. And then you could describe the different aspects of that unit and then the tests that belong to these different aspects. That is something you could do, and ultimately you would be adding more and more levels of indentation here to your output. So you can nest multiple describes if you need to, but very often one level is enough.